We have a really simple widget list that is allowing us to render some static initial state of a couple of widgets, plus where we can add any number of widgets at the bottom. There it is. So let's go a little further and perhaps add the capability of removing the widget. Okay, so let's do that. So to do that, we're probably going to have to improve our model of our widgets. To remove it, we're going to need to know, well, which one are you removing, right? And there's no way to uniquely identify them unless we add some unique identifier to these, right? So let's add some unique identifiers by adding perhaps an ID at the end. So this would be 1, 2, 3. This would be ID 2, 3, 4, and maybe here ID 3, 4, 5, right? And when we create a brand new one, we're just going to add a brand new ID based off of the date. So new date, right? And get time. Okay? All right. Now that we have that, we can perhaps add a delete button. And when we delete when we say delete, we're going to pass this ID so we know which one to remove, which one to filter out. Right? So let's do that in the widget list component. As we're iterating over these, what we could do here is that perhaps at the end of this li, we can add a button. Right? We can say button delete. Right? So notice that now we're going to have a delete button at the end of each one of the widgets. It looks awful, looks ugly, but you're going to make it look pretty using Bootstrap. And when we click on it, we want to pass the ID of the widget that we are removing, right, up to the container. Right? And the container will then notify the reducer, and the reducer will re-update the state. Oh, sorry, we don't update the state, right? We create a brand new state. Right? In Redux, the main feature here is that we never mutate the state. Instead, we always generate the next state, right? And then that next state again propagated down to the containers, down from the store down to the provider to the containers down to the components to re-render. All right, so we want to navigate. We want to notify here that we're deleting a widget. So delete widget, right? And so here we're going to do do an onClick and call delete widget. Yes, right? But that's not enough, right? We need to pass the ID of the widget that we are removing. Right? So careful that you don't do this. Right? You don't do delete widget and then parentheses widget.id. Right? If you do that, you're going to end up in an infinite loop. Right? This is going to cause a refresh. The refresh is going to render. The render is going to call again, and the call is going to generate a refresh, and you're going to end up in an infinite loop. Careful. Right? So instead, if you want to pass parameters down to a function, make sure to wrap it inside of a function, right? Meaning you're saying that in the future, I want this function to be called when you click on the onClick. Don't call it now, right? Don't call it now, call it later, right? And when the onClick occurs. All right, excellent. So this is going to notify up to the container, and the container responsibility is to map this. Map this new function to call the dispatcher. Right? We're going to call the dispatcher. Right? So we're going to say dispatch, and we're going to say type, and we're going to say delete widget. Right? And then in the reducer we're going to have to handle that particular case that we're going to. We're going to say delete widget. Right? And so what do we do here? What do we return? What do we return? Well, what we'd like to be able to do is do more or less what we did with create widget, but kind of the inverse, right? We'd like to compute the next set of widgets, which includes all the old widgets minus, right, the widget whose ID is the one we clicked on. Yes? Right? So somehow we need to pass the ID into the reducer. So how do we do that? Notice that the dispatcher, up to this point, we've just been passing just a type. Right? Well, it turns out that I can pass whatever I want. I can pass other things here, and that will be all available, right? And this entire object will be available in the in the action object. Not only the type, but anything that I pass to it. Yes? Right, so what can I pass it? Well, this delete widget, if you remember, it's passing us something, isn't it? The delete widget is right here. It's passing us the ID of the widget that we're removing. So here in this argument, when we call this function, we have the widget ID. We have the widget ID being passed to us, right? And we can just we can make it now part of the action object, so it goes down to the reducer, right? So we're going to pass in here widget ID, and we'll pass in the widget ID here, right? Again, these don't have to match. I just made them same. Well, just to bring that, make that evident, we'll name these differently. There it is, widget ID, ID. Yes? So we are passing the ID into the action. So now the reducer has that ID as part of this action, right? Right? Named what? Named as widget ID. So now here we can recalculate what the object is going to be. I'm going to return the widgets, but not all of them. Not all of them. I'm going to iterate over the old list of widgets. And I'm going to filter out the ones that I don't want, right? Just one of them. So to do that, we're going to say, I'm going to look at the old state over the old widgets, and I'm going to filter. I'm going to filter, and here I have each one of the widgets. I'm only going to keep the ones whose ID is not the ID that I'm removing, right? So I'm going to say I'm going to keep the ones whose widget ID is different from the action.widget ID, right? Which is what I'm passing, right? That's what I'm passing as an argument, right? So that's going to calculate a brand new array which sets the widgets, and then that's going to cause a re-render of the components. Right, so let's go here, right? And so if I remove that, notice that it's gone. Or I can create new widgets. I can remove the widgets, or I can add any number of widgets, and then I can just remove them from the content. Make sense? Everybody good? Awesome.